welcome to a new episode of Journey of a Christian Writer. My name is M.L. Bull. I'm a Christian and women's fiction author, and in this episode I'll be going over 6 essential elements of story writing. There are many building blocks to making a story complete, but there are 6 elements that really make stories what they are, and these include character, setting, plot, point of view, conflict, and dialogue. The first element that I'll be going over is characters. Characters are the heart of stories that give them the essence of life. They're the leading roles and heroes and protagonists that we cheer for. The sidekick characters or best friends we wish we had, or the villains or antagonists that we sometimes feel sorry for or despise. Characters are one of the most important, if not the most important, element of stories. Because after all, if there was no characters, what would be the point of the story if there's no one to talk about? The next element that I'll be going over is for settings. And settings is like the physical appearance of stories. They're the sceneries, the main locales, the times and seasons, and the other locations in stories that give a sense of place to stories. Settings could also be a character within itself based on how the characters interact with the settings. So it's really important also to describe the location of where characters are, because if there was no setting, it would be as if characters are walking across a blank white canvas. And it also would make it harder to make the characters' worlds be believable to readers. So setting is also a very important element within story writing. The third element that I'll be going over is for plot. And plot is pretty much the layout of the story, which pretty much sets up how all the different events within the story is to be executed throughout the story by the characters. It pretty much tells what's supposed to happen within the story, and it also answers the 5 W questions of who, what, where, when, and why, as well as how things or events happen within the story. Plot is probably one of the most, if not the most important element within stories, because plot in itself pretty much is the story. It's just another name for plot is story. So that is also an important element when it comes to story writing. The next element that I'll be going over is for point of view. And point of view is pretty much the eyes through which the story is being told. This element, it could be the one telling the story, it could be their point of view, the viewpoint character, but it also could be set up whereas the one telling the story is telling someone else's story. There are some stories in books whereas the one that's telling the story is not who the story is about, but they're telling someone else's story within a book or a novel. There are different types of points of view, and some of these are first-person point of view, which uses the pronouns of I as well as me, and second-person point of view, which uses the pronouns of you, and third person point of view limited, which uses he, she, or it, and also could use they, but it's like the point of view is limited to one character when you use third person point of view, but it's from like the third person point of view pronouns of he, she, or it, but it's limited to one character per chapter, for example, or like per scene within a story. And omniscient point of view is like an all-knowing point of view. It's almost like there's a bird's eye view and you're seeing everything going on with all the characters. You know all the characters' thoughts and their feelings and everything. Those are just the different points of views. Point of view can also help with the tense of a story, whether it's past, present, or future. So that is something else to keep in mind when it comes to choosing point of view for stories, is deciding on what actual tense that you want to write the story in. Past tense is the most common for point of view when it comes to tenses, but there are some stories that are in present tense. A couple examples of third person limited is The Reason by William Searles, as well as my own novel, Eva's Promise, whereas I go back and forth in the chapters of the wife's point of view and the husband's point of view, back and forth. Those are just some examples of third person limited. But point of view is really important for story writing because it helps to identify who is telling the story, as well as being able to distinguish between multiple characters. The next element that I'll be going over, element 5, that I'll be talking about is for conflict. And conflict is the complications, challenges, and obstacles that intervene within characters' pathways to hinder them from obtaining their goals. Conflict can range from a number of different things. It could be internal conflict within a character, or it could be external conflict from the outside world. Some examples of different types of conflict could be other characters, natural disasters, or just some particular laws within an institution or in society that hinders characters from being able to do certain things. Within my current novel that I'm working on, one external conflict within my story would be, of course, slavery. In my novel, The Path of Freedom, which hindered slaves from having their freedom, and just the way that the systems and things were set up with women's rights being limited and all of that as well. Something that Millie is faced with as a young white woman from the South. But those are just some examples of conflict. And conflict is really important because conflict is pretty much like the icing on the cake. It makes stories more exciting and gives it more of a purpose, because without any conflict it pretty much would be like eating a dry cake with no frosting on it, and no decorations or anything. It would just really be bland. So it's important to have conflict within the story, and it's a big part of how you set up your plot as well when you're writing a story. The final element, element number 6 that I'll be going over, is dialogue. Keeping it at a simple term analogy, is pretty much just the exchange of verbal communication between two or more characters. But dialogue can also be more than that when you think deeper about it, because there's multiple ways that we can communicate, and our characters can do the same thing within stories. Characters can communicate through their body language or their mannerisms, their movements, their physical interactions with their environments, and their emotional responses. So there's multiple ways that characters can have dialogue in a story, as well as their inner thoughts or inner dialogue is another form of dialogue that can be in a story. Even if it's just one character, there still can be dialogue within a story by that one character interacting with their environment, or with animals, or just with themselves, of inner dialogue. So it's really important also to have dialogue within a story, even though it might not seem like an element that is necessarily needed within a story, or that could possibly be not have to be in a story. It actually is one that is quite important, as well as the other elements when it comes to story writing. But that is all that I have for this video. By using all of these 6 essential elements and combining them together and using them cleverly and effectively, you can create one amazing play, novel, or short story that will blow your readers away. For more detailed information on the subject of this video and other writing tips, tricks, and out-of-the-box ideas, you can visit my Earther website and check out my writing blog, The Brainstorm, under the Writing Blog button of my menu navigation. Just go to mlbullbooks.com and you'll see it there. I hope you enjoyed this latest video, and thank you for watching.